How important was the role of black women as heads of households during slavery? The role of black women as heads of households during slavery was profoundly important, both for family survival and for the cultural continuity of enslaved communities. Although slavery fractured families through sale, forced migration, and the stripping of legal rights, black women often emerged as the primary stabilizing force within these unstable conditions. Here's why their role was so essential. Number 1. Let's talk about the realities of forced family separation. Enslaved families were frequently torn apart. Husbands, fathers, and male partners were often sold to different plantations, rented out for labor, assigned to different work schedules, denied any legal or social power to protect their families. Because of this, black women often became the consistent, central figure in the household, since they were sometimes kept with young children for labor purposes, such as domestic work or field work near home. Number 2. One extremely important topic that we cannot ignore is about the cultural and emotional backbone of the community. Black women provided emotional nurturing under brutal conditions, cultural knowledge, including songs, folktales, spiritual beliefs, and survival strategies, informal leadership, creating kinship networks that functioned like extended families. Their role preserved identity, dignity, and hope for the next generation. Number 3. Finally, we need to talk about the economic survivors and resource managers. Enslaved women were forced to work heavy labor, often the same as men, but also cooked meals, grew vegetables or raised small animals for supplemental food, gathered medicinal herbs, managed whatever small resources the enslaved family had access to. In this sense, they were the economic managers of survival. Number 4. Now let's try to delve deeper, focusing on protectors and educators of children. Since enslaved children were not guaranteed the presence of their fathers, and sometimes not even their mothers, black women raised their own children, other relatives' children, orphan children, community children. They taught resilience, discipline, and basic survival so the next generation could endure a system designed to destroy them. Number 5. Another extremely important topic that we cannot fail to discuss is about the quiet resistors and strategists. Black women often led the subtle forms of resistance that made everyday life bearable, such as teaching children how to avoid punishment, hiding food or resources, sustaining spiritual practices, creating networks of mutual support. Their leadership allowed families to endure and sometimes to escape or negotiate better conditions. Number 6. Let's talk about the birth of the strong black matriarch tradition. Because they were often the central and most reliable family figure, enslaved black women naturally developed leadership roles, authority within family units, emotional intelligence required to maintain fragile households. This legacy influenced black family structures long after emancipation, not because black men were absent by choice, but because slavery violently destabilized traditional family roles. The role of black women as heads of households during slavery was not only important, it was foundational. They held families together, protected children, maintained cultural traditions, and created stability where the system tried to destroy it. Without the leadership of enslaved black women, the survival of black families, and black culture in America, would have been far more fragile, if not impossible. Here is the continuation, going deeper into the long-term impact of black women's household leadership during and after slavery. Number 7. After emancipation, rebuilding families under women's leadership. When slavery ended, formerly enslaved people sought to reunite families shattered by decades of forced separation. Black women played a crucial role in this process. They became the organizers of family restoration. Women often traveled long distances looking for husbands, children, or siblings, posted newspaper ads seeking lost relatives, reconstructed kinship networks from memory, took in orphan children with no surviving parents. Even in freedom, the trauma of family fragmentation meant that women's central role in the household persisted. Their resilience shaped how Black families rebuilt themselves. Number 8. Now let's continue analyzing the economic pressure reinforced women's central household role. After slavery, Black men faced racially discriminatory labor markets, convict leasing, lynching and racial terror, labor exploitation that limited their ability to provide financially. This meant that many Black women had to work as domestic laborers, take on agricultural jobs, manage household budgets, provide for children. Their leadership wasn't a rejection of traditional roles, it was a forced adaptation to ongoing racial oppression. Number 9. Now let's try to delve deeper, focusing on misinterpretations by white society. White sociologists and politicians later misinterpreted these survival strategies. Instead of acknowledging the brutal conditions that made Black women leaders in the home, they blamed Black women for weak or matriarchal family structures, portrayed Black men as irresponsible or absent, ignored the structural violence Black families endured for centuries. This view culminated in the 1965 Moynihan Report, which pathologized Black matriarchy instead of recognizing it as a form of resistance, protection, and survival. Number 10. Let's talk about the legacy in today's Black family and community structures. The strength of enslaved Black women created lasting cultural patterns that still influence modern life. A strong intergenerational female networks. Grandmothers, mothers, aunts, and cousins often form the backbone of Black families. The emphasis on community-based child-rearing. Children are often raised by extended families, reflecting traditions from both Africa and slavery-era survival. See women as moral and emotional anchors. Black women continue to be leaders in churches, community organizations, family decision-making. These patterns began as a necessity during slavery and evolved into a source of pride and stability. Number 11. Another extremely important topic that we cannot fail to discuss is about the myth versus the reality of the strong Black woman. There is a direct line between enslaved women's household leadership and the modern stereotype of the strong Black woman. But the stereotype is only partly rooted in truth. The reality: Black women developed extraordinary resilience under inhumane conditions. Their leadership saved countless families from total destruction. The distortion: society now uses this resilience to justify neglect and emotional burden. Black women are expected to be endlessly strong, self-sacrificing, and invulnerable. The historical truth is this: Black women were strong because they had to be, not because they were superhuman. Number 12. Why this history matters today. Understanding the role of Black women as heads of households during slavery helps explain why Black families developed unique structures, why Black women often lead social, political, and religious movements, why the stereotype of the strong Black woman persists, why conversations around gender roles in Black communities must consider the trauma of slavery and Jim Crow. It highlights not pathology but the genius, adaptability, and courage of Black women who kept their families alive in a system built to destroy them. Certainly, here is the continuation, expanding into deeper historical, cultural, and psychological dimensions of Black women's household leadership during slavery. Number 13. Now let's continue analyzing the African cultural influences on women's roles during slavery. Many enslaved Africans brought with them cultural systems where women held significant authority. Lineage was sometimes matrilineal. Women managed markets, agriculture, and household structure. Communities depended on complementary gender roles rather than rigid hierarchies. While slavery violently disrupted these traditions, fragments survived. Black women, drawing from their African heritage, acted as mediators, healers, spiritual guides, cultural memory keepers. This continuity gave enslaved communities a sense of identity despite oppression. Number 14. Now let's try to delve deeper, focusing on Black women as spiritual leaders and healers. Spirituality was a lifeline. Black women became midwives, herbal healers, root workers, prayer leaders, keepers of African spiritual practices blended with Christianity. Their knowledge provided comfort during illness, guidance during childbirth, rituals that honored ancestors, hope during despair. In many cases, these women symbolized the heart of the community, helping others endure mentally and emotionally. Number 15. Another extremely important topic that we cannot fail to discuss is about the psychological toll of forced leadership. While their strength was remarkable, it came at a tremendous cost. Enslaved Black women lived under constant fear of sexual violence, anxiety about the sale of their children, crushing workloads, emotional exhaustion, a lack of protection or legal personhood. They bore the weight of being the center of the family yet had no rights or safety. This dual reality created chronic stress, grief and unresolved trauma, generational emotional patterns that still echo today. Their resilience should never obscure the pain that produced it. Number 16. Emotional intelligence as a survival strategy. Black women became experts in reading the moods of enslavers to protect their children, teaching emotional discipline to avoid punishment, offering empathy and comfort to the traumatized, creating safe emotional spaces in unsafe physical environments. This emotional labor was invisible but essential. It kept families alive. Number 17. Now let's try to delve deeper, focusing on the quiet acts of defiance led by women. Though rebellion is often portrayed as male-led, Black women frequently ignited subtle, everyday resistance, such as slowing down their labor, teaching children to read in secret, refusing to accept the enslaver's narrative of inferiority, maintaining African names, songs, and rituals, stealing food or supplies to support families. These small rebellions sustained dignity and were just as powerful as large-scale uprisings. Number 18. Now let's continue analyzing the Black women's leadership in reconstructing community identity. Beyond their immediate families, Black women shaped wider community norms, creating a moral and cultural foundation that endured long after slavery. They emphasized sharing food and resources, cooperative child care, mutual support among women, protection of the vulnerable, education and spiritual growth. These values became the backbone of Black neighborhoods, churches, and social movements in the decades after emancipation. Number 19. One extremely important topic that we cannot ignore is about the foundations for activism and social justice. The same strength that stabilized enslaved families later fueled major movements. Black women became abolitionists, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, organizers of mutual aid societies, founders of schools and churches, leaders in Reconstruction politics, builders of the Black Women's Club movement. Their leadership did not begin after slavery, it evolved from a long history of holding their families together under extraordinary pressure. Number 20. Finally, we need to talk about a legacy that still shapes modern Black womanhood. Modern expectations placed on Black women to be strong, self-sacrificing, emotionally invulnerable, providers and protectors, trace directly back to the roles they were forced to play during slavery. But while this legacy is rooted in oppression, it also reflects a history of leadership, cultural preservation, emotional brilliance, unmatched spiritual strength. This is why discussions about Black women today, in relationships, society, culture, and activism, cannot be separated from this historical foundation.